Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Excellency, Mr. Dennis Francis, President of the General Assembly, Excellency, Mr. Peter Mohan Maitri, Permanent Representative of Sri Lanka, and the President of the 21st session of the High-Level Committee on South-South Cooperation, Mr. Achim Steiner, Administrator of the United Nations Development Programme, and also the BAPA Plus 40 Secretary General, Mrs. Rabab Fatima, High Representative of the least developed countries, landlocked developing countries, and small islands developing states, Excellency Mr. Gerardo Penalver Porta, Permanent Representative of and Ambassador of Cuba, presenting here on behalf of the G77 and China, and Mr. Lee Junha, Undersecretary General for Economic and Social Affairs. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, as we come together to observe the United Nations Day for South-South Cooperation and South-South Solidarity, I would like to take this opportunity to start by expressing our profound sympathy and condolences to those affected by the earthquakes in Morocco and the catastrophic floods in Libya. We stand in solidarity with you. Through solidarity, equity, and partnership, unlocking the potential of South-South cooperation is essential to assisting our neighbors and achieving the SDGs. I have the honor today to deliver the message of the UN Secretary General on the occasion of the United Nations Day for South-South Cooperation. In our world of deeply connected challenges, South-South cooperation plays a vital role in shaping a brighter future. The United Nations Day for South-South Cooperation is a powerful reminder that when nations unite, they can overcome obstacles and accelerate sustainable development. From climate action to poverty eradication, from healthcare to education, from trade to digitalization, solidarity and strong partnerships between developing countries can pave the way for a more equitable and sustainable world. Only together we can build a world of shared prosperity where cooperation knows no borders. Through South-South cooperation, countries of the Global South can share knowledge, skills, expertise, and resources, coordinate their efforts, and benefit from economies of scale. Together, they can multiply their sustainable development efforts to mitigate climate disruption, find solutions to a global health crisis, manage supply chain disruptions, and deliver humanitarian assistance. South-South and Triangle cooperation are important, high-value complements to cooperation with developed countries, but they do not replace or reduce the responsibilities and commitments of the Global North. Developed economies have a duty to work constructively with economies in the Global South to reduce inequality and build bridges to a sustainable future for all. As we mark the United Nations Day for South-South cooperation, let us recognize this form of collaboration as an essential catalyst for change, embodying solidarity, innovation, and mutual support. End of the UN Secretary General's message. Now, I'd like to add a few words on behalf of the UN Office for South-South Cooperation, if you allow me. This important UN Day marks the exact 45th anniversary of the adoption of the Buenos Aires Action Plan for promoting and implementing technical cooperation among development countries, BAPA. This day is a celebration of the economic, social, and political developments made in recent years by developing countries via South-South cooperation. It also offers us the opportunity to highlight its achievements, which lifted millions of people out of poverty and hardships. Over the past 45 years, we have seen a surge in South-South cooperation. Throughout the Global South, we have witnessed major shifts in the catalytic drivers of growth through remarkable increases in economic output, as well as the rapid expansion of trade, investment, and financial, technological, and other flows between developing countries. They have also emerged as leading voices in global governance, champions of new institutions and platforms, and of development action for the realization of the 2030 Agenda. 2023 has seen a notable positive developments and amplified voices in support of South-South cooperation, including the assumption of the leadership of the Group of 20 by India, the admission of the African Union as a permanent member, the hosting of the upcoming UN Climate Change Conference COP28 by UAE, and more recently the expansion of the BRICS bloc with additional new members from the South. Those developments will further bolster the voice of the South in the global governance of development, economic and environmental affairs, and will continue to build common agendas at global, regional, and sub-regional levels. For the past years, countries of the South have been playing a key role in addressing the recovery efforts ranging from the pandemic to natural disasters. And in the past few days, we have witnessed the mobilization and solidarities of countries of the South, such as Algeria, Kuwait, Oman, Tunisia, Turkey, and UAE, which have offered to extend financial, humanitarian, and medical support to Morocco in response to the devastating earthquake. These examples are powerful reminders of the importance of solidarity, opportunity, and capacity that exists within the Global South to unite and overcome challenges together. However, with all these manifestations, the Global South is facing dire and intertwined challenges as a result of crises and conflicts, climate change, natural disasters, all of which are reversing years of development progress and economic growth. More than ever, we need humanity, solidarity, and cooperation. This is why it is important that we continue strengthening the vital role of South-South cooperation and engage different development partners. It is through synergy, complementarity, and partnerships that we can leverage South-South cooperation potential as well as each other's strengths and expertise. Let us reaffirm today our commitment to this invaluable means of cooperation for the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals and other internationally agreed development agenda. I thank you. I would like us also to move to our next segment of the program, and I'm very pleased here to be joined by a high-level panel of speakers who will share today with us their views on the theme of the day, solidarity, equity, and partnerships, unlocking the South-South cooperation to achieve the SDGs. And I have the pleasure to start by giving the floor to His Excellency Mr. Denis Francis, President of the 78th session of the UN General Assembly. The floor is yours, Mr. President.
Thank you, Madam Chair. His Excellency Peter Mohan Pears, President of the 21st session of the High-Level Committee on South-South Cooperation, His Excellency Geraldo Portal, Permanent Representative of Cuba, representing G77, Ms. Dima Al-Khatib, Director of the UN Office for South-South Cooperation, UNDP Administrator Mr. Akim Steiner, Under-Secretary General and High Representative Ms. Rabab Fatima, Under-Secretary General Mr. Lee Junhua, distinguished panelists, Excellencies. Given the critical juncture at which we find ourselves, our gathering today holds immense promise and significance, but also this encounter takes place against a backdrop of pressing urgency. What should be a moment for celebration is instead a moment of reckoning. Unhappily, we are not where we need to be in many ways. The state of our multilateral system remains a matter of continuing concern and disquiet. Geopolitical tensions are testing the very rules and principles of the UN Charter. The impacts of climate change are intensifying. This commemorative event coincides with the halfway point in implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, our blueprint for perseverance. But with only 7 years left, we remain far from realizing our agenda and its ambitious goals. Most worrying is that implementation of the SDGs remains severely constrained by a widening financing gap, and it is the developing countries that are bearing the full brunt of this challenge. While it is true that the Global South has suffered significant setbacks exacerbated in part by the global pandemic and climatic disasters, I still believe that it is in such turbulent times that we must lean on to the strengths of South-South cooperation. Colleagues, South-South and triangular cooperation are not mere options. They are essential and yet underutilized tools to achieve global peace, prosperity, progress, and sustainability for all. If effectively leveraged, South-South and triangular cooperation has proven to be a robust and effective mechanism for collective support, particularly in areas of health, food security, and education. Faced with the myriad of challenges, it is increasingly important that we maximize the potential of such cooperation, which amplifies a strong collaboration between and among developing countries themselves, in partnership with developed nations and international organizations. Excellencies, colleagues, as we navigate these turbulent times, it is equally imperative that we fully harness our shared experiences, best practices, and combined resources, especially on climate action. The upcoming SDG Summit in less than a week, November's COP28, and the Summit of the Future in 2024 all provide platforms for us to strategize, innovate, and work cohesively towards a sustainable future. These and the analysis in the report of the Secretary General on progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals offer us a unique opportunity to understand and address our diverse needs while spearheading groundbreaking initiatives to fulfill our collective objectives. But our aims can only be attained by working together. Indeed, as we forge ahead to achieve the 2030 Agenda, the next 7 years will be defined by the ability of the South-South countries to unite, to work coherently, and overcome any differences. Showcasing our potential for success, the 21st session of the High-Level Committee on South-South Cooperation highlighted the transformative impact of collaboration in sectors such as trade, investment, and digitalization. Reinforced by global discussions at forums like the 2023 Development Cooperation Forum and the High-Level Political Forum on Sustainable Development, South-South cooperation has shifted from just being a concept to a tangible solutions toolkit. What we require now is a new paradigm shift, one that moves away from referencing the past towards a resounding call for a quantum leap to create the future we want. Colleagues, if we confront the complex crises that lie ahead, our shared interests, experiences, technology, and resources will be our collective strength. Let us prioritize and invest strategically in these valuable assets. Monitoring and reporting mechanisms should be established to continually assess the impact of South-South collaborations, ensuring that they drive positive change and meet their objectives. We must be mindful, however, that South-South cooperation is not a substitute for North-South development cooperation, but rather a noteworthy reinforcement of it. We must also extend the hand of collaboration beyond government and multilateral partners by ensuring that civil society and the private sector are embraced as partners in seeking inclusive solutions. Excellencies, let me conclude by emphasizing that at the halfway point to 2030, or as the UN has dubbed it, the halftime campaign, we must seize this moment to galvanize momentum behind achieving the SDGs. Let us redouble our efforts and recommit to the founding ideals of South-South cooperation. It is our blueprint for global unity, action, and unwavering commitment to a sustainable future. Let us harness this commemorative day, the United Nations Day for South-South Cooperation, to celebrate and reimagine transformative initiatives. By working together in solidarity with one another, I am convinced that we can build a more sustainable, more equitable, more just world for all, a world of spreading opportunity for economic success. In this journey, I urge you all to take along with you the most vulnerable among us, the LDCs, the LLDCs, and the SIDS, who are at real risk of being left furthest behind. For that reason, the Office of the PGA will devote its efforts in coming months to working towards bringing relief and support to this group of states in special situations. I trust that you will all join me in that enterprise. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President of the General Assembly, for your remarks. I now give the floor to Mr. Peter Mohan Maheswari Pieris, Permanent Representative of Sri Lanka and the President of the 21st session of the High-Level Committee on South-South Cooperation. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Director Dima, for giving me the floor. Your Excellency, Dennis Francis, the President of the General Assembly, the Ambassador Jurado, who's my colleague here, who chairs the G77 today, Mr. Ikem Steiner, Administrator, Rabab Fatima, my one-time colleague, and we have lost her to the UN, and Mr. Lee Junhua, the Undersecretary for Economic Affairs. I was perusing the papers, and I was really wondering as to what I should try and portray this evening. And I thought that I was required to canvass for South-South cooperation. So permit me to do a little bit of canvassing, Mr. President, for South-South cooperation, which needs perhaps more than a push. As we have been told by our director today, the 12th of September, that's today, is declared a United Nations Day for South-South Cooperation by the General Assembly, which passed Resolution 58/220. Now, this date, coincidentally, as we were reminded, commemorates the Buenos Aires Action adopted in 1978. Mr. President, reading through the small lines, I found this little interesting bit of text. Unlocking the potential of South-South cooperation. I thought it would be better if you said unleashing the potential of South-South cooperation, perhaps. So let me say a few words on the unleashing of the potential that South-South cooperation has. There is a firm conclusion that fundamentally the promotion of knowledge sharing must be encouraged by the exchange of our own experiences, our best practices and lessons learned amongst developing countries in the Global South, if this whole initiative was to be given a real push. Why should South-South cooperation or triangular cooperation be so fascinating? What's so fascinating about it? Now, I find that intrinsic in this mechanism is a comparatively low-cost transaction. Yeah. Now, that's pretty attractive for small countries like ourselves, Administrator. A low-cost transaction. There is always an emphasis, I see, on the speed of service and project delivery. The whole structure of South-South, the initiative, offers great flexibility. Yeah. There's a little room for leverage to push, pull, shove, and so on and so forth. And importantly, it encourages the use of national systems. Now, that's very important for us, not to be left behind. Capacity and demand-driven approaches whilst offering complementarity of the strength of those systems. Now, my dear friends, importantly again, the mechanism appears to promote sharing the relevant solutions between partners with common problems, with comparable circumstances. In other words, we are all similarly circumstanced, vulnerable to the many post-COVID forces that are operating on us. So it is also observed that there are a growing number of states, a growing number of member states have adopted the integration of the South-South cooperation and the triangular cooperation mechanisms with a view to accelerating the progress towards achieving the SDGs. Now, I find this expression, South-South cooperation, my dear friends, prima facie too simple, quite frankly. I suppose the complexity of it is its simplicity. Be that as it may, it is imperative that we endeavor to appreciate that the core activity of South-South cooperation, and that is in the nature of the partnership that is pursued between two or more developing countries through common national capacity development objectives. Providing, what does it provide? An exchange of knowledge, an exchange of skills, an exchange of resources, technical know-how, and bilaterally, regional and interregional actions. Now, triangular cooperation, I don't need to explain it to you. It is a mechanism structured upon nothing but trust, I believe, and which needs to synthesize, which does synthesize and is required to synthesize multiple resources and capacities of the requesting developing countries in its quest to achieving the SDGs. Now, you might ask me the question, what are the ways through which this can be done? Well, it appears that one needs fundamentally, as I said, to develop strong partnerships between countries and of the Global South as they need to address common challenges that would facilitate achieving the SDGs. Now, some of the well-known methods of promoting partnerships, of course, is to encourage the creation of networks, establish joint initiatives, promote technology transfer, capacity building. It is therefore imperative, I say, that, of course, all this can be done if there's money. We need financial support, right, for this purpose. Now, we must therefore enhance financial resources, which is not going to come easily, and technical assistance to support the initiatives by increasing funding mechanisms such as the trust funds. I think we need to make the trust funds more robust and which can be accessed much easily. Establish dedicated funds, and by encouraging global financing institutions to provide specific, focused support. You will appreciate, my dear friends, that the availability of finances alone will not suffice. This must be accompanied with an enhanced technology transfer between countries in the Global South, enabling us to address development challenges more effectively. Now, this undoubtedly requires a creation of platforms for technology and sharing, technical assistance, and promote innovation. Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, it is said that the achievement of the 2030 agenda will depend on the performance of the SDGs of achieving it in the Asia-Pacific region. We know that the early stages of the SDG implementation, South Asian and Southeast Asian countries endeavored to align their SDGs with their respective policies and strategies. A notable feature, I say, that is observed is the wide acceptance from the different countries in the region of the delegation of responsibilities to the local level and the movement towards decentralized SDG implementation. It was heartening to note that in recognition of their global responsibilities, we had many countries submitted their VNRs. Now, in the final analysis, it appears, I may be optimistic in saying this, that the South-South cooperation, not because I'm at the lead helm as president, has yielded positive outcomes, and that's the merit should go to the Secretariat itself, had yielded positive outcomes in the areas of poverty reduction, health and well-being, agriculture development, climate change, and in trade and economic cooperation. So, Mr. Chairman, I pledge my full support, and my government also pledges its full support to the initiative, which I believe will be the key not only to the achievement of the SDGs, but to genuine multilateralism. Thank you.
I thank the Permanent Representative of Sri Lanka, His Excellency, the President of the 21st session of the High-Level Committee on South-South Cooperation, for his insights and views. Thank you very much. And I give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Gerardo Penalver Porta, Permanent Representative and Ambassador of Cuba.
Estimado Excelentísimo.
Your Excellency, Mr. Dennis Francis, President of the General Assembly, distinguished USG, Mr. Zhonghua, Mr. Rawat, Mr. Steiner, Mr. Mohan, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to thank the United Nations Office for South-South Cooperation and the Director, Ms. Dima Khatib, for convening this such timely and important meeting to commemorate the International Day for South-South Cooperation. We are meeting here to commemorate an historic milestone in South-South cooperation. That was the United Nations Conference on Technical Cooperation between Developing Countries that took place in Buenos Aires from the 30th of August to the 12th of September in 1978. And that was an important milestone in the continuous efforts of the United Nations to promote economic and technical cooperation between developing countries. Today is an opportunity to reaffirm the ongoing relevance of South-South cooperation in the establishment of a global alliance that is more equitable for development and peace. And this commemoration is taking place at a political juncture for all developing countries, a critical juncture, like our PGA, Mr. Dennis Francis, referred to. We are fighting against the aggravated effects of multiple crises, such as the negative socio-economic consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic, the growing climate emergency, the growing burden of debt, the financial and economic crisis, and growing food insecurity, as well as the technological gap and an unfair international order that is ever more unbalanced, perpetuating the crises. Global solidarity and cooperation have never been so essential when it comes to overcoming the challenges of these multiple crises, and when it comes to helping developing countries to achieve the 2030 Agenda and its Sustainable Development Goals. South-South cooperation is a fundamental pillar in international cooperation, and its strengthening and the development of it is a key priority for my delegation, since it contributes to the well-being of peoples and countries of the Global South in achieving the internationally agreed frameworks. Over the next few days, the leaders of the G77 in China will be meeting in La Havana to debate how to engage in joint development strategies in the areas of science, technology and innovation by way of South-South cooperation. The summit, that all United Nations agencies have been invited to, will adopt a group statement on this important issue for the development of our countries. This will also be an opportunity to pool knowledge that has been acquired during the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic from the perspective of the Global South. Cuba, that is very proud of the concrete and lasting results of cooperation between nations of the Global South, is very much looking forward to this debate that will also be promoting better coordination within the United Nations system on issues such as science, technology and innovation, so that developing countries can participate in an active manner in the global economy, especially the knowledge-based economy. South-South cooperation is a proactive expression of solidarity between the peoples and countries of the Global South, and it should be guided guided by the principle of the respect for national sovereignty, national ownership, independence, equality, non-conditionality, and the non-interference in domestic affairs, a mutual benefit. In many different fora, the group has focused on the fact that South-South cooperation should be based on the following principles. South-South cooperation and its agenda must be driven forward by countries of the Global South, firstly. It cannot be considered a substitute for North-South cooperation. Its strengthening should not be a substitute for the support of developed countries to southern countries. And the financial contributions of other developing countries should not be considered ODA from those countries to other countries in the South. They're expressions of solidarity and cooperation based on experience and shared sympathy. South-South cooperation is a development program based on the specific objectives and based on the specific historic contexts of developing countries and their different needs and expectations. It is based on association and strong solidarity that is authentic and broad, and it's based on equality, mutual respect, and reciprocal benefits. Further, South-South cooperation seeks to bolster multilateralism, addressing development challenges with a focus on results, exchanging good practices and engaging in exchange of experience between these countries, seeking development that covers all matters of international cooperation and not just technical cooperation. And we seek to engage in policy making and decision making to support efforts to promote sustainable development. The means and ways of the promotion of this cooperation, lastly, this South-South cooperation, is based on cooperation and bilateral integration, sub-regional, regional and interregional integration, as well as multilateral cooperation. Despite the positive results that have been achieved and the hope we have for the future, South-South cooperation faces significant limitations. A lot more could be achieved if developing countries benefited from technical and financial support from developed countries and from the United Nations system. Developed countries should stick to their commitment to North-South cooperation. Although some support is being provided by developed partners, we believe that there is still a lot to be done, in particular when it comes to achieving the SDGs that were agreed on internationally. These are based on the principles of equity and solidarity. And by way of conclusion, we believe that solid links and support from the United Nations system will contribute to us unleashing the potential of countries of the Global South. The upcoming G77 summit that will take place in Kampala in Uganda in January 2023, without a doubt should contribute to further bolstering South-South cooperation. Thank you very much.
I thank His Excellency Mr. Gerardo Penalver Portal, Permanent Representative of Cuba, and would like to give the floor to the UNDP Administrator, Mr. Achim Steiner. The floor is yours.
His Excellency Mr. Dennis Francis, President of the 78th session of the UN General Assembly, His Excellency Peter Mohampiris, Permanent Representative of Sri Lanka and President of the 21st session of the High-Level Committee on South-South Cooperation, His Excellency Gerardo Penalver Portal, Permanent Representative of Cuba, to my dear colleagues Rabab, Junhua and Dima, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is actually a real pleasure to be here today to celebrate the United Nations Day for South-South Cooperation, and in such esteemed and distinguished company. And yet I'm tempted to begin by saying that as the proud host of the United Nations Office on South-South Cooperation, and all of you having gotten to know our very dynamic director of this office, in UNDP, every day of the year is a day of South-South cooperation, because there is no moment in which Dima, her team, and many of our colleagues in UNDP remind me that this is the business of development cooperation in today's world. And Peter, in the context also of triangular cooperation. But I want to address you very briefly, because I know there are distinguished speakers here and many of you want to contribute, by perhaps just addressing a little bit more practically, how does an institution such as UNDP, the UN's development program embedded in the UN development system and the UN family as a whole, translate what were, and you recited them so clearly, Ambassador, just now, the objectives, the objective of unlocking or unleashing, as you called it, the potential. I think the first reality we need to accept is that in the landscape of development today, solutions abound everywhere. And therefore, finding ways in which we can connect those who have experimented and found ways forward with those who are either just beginning or are addressing the same challenges must be the everyday business of an organization such as UNDP. And I use two terms just very briefly, knowledge and connector. Because knowledge in today's world is being generated everywhere, but our challenge is it's not enough to just have knowledge, it's not just enough to connect those who have ideas and experience. The question then is, how do you invest in the ability to roll these out? And that is why South-South cooperation is, in today's universe of possibilities, increasingly also a proposition for co-investment. Because without that, the greatest ideas will remain simply ideas. And this is why sometimes through the UN Office on South-South Cooperation, we have seen these South-South trust funds being great incubators for the kind of financing that is different in quality and objective than perhaps the more traditional ODA financing. India, Brazil, South Africa's Facility for Poverty and Hunger Alleviation is just one of those examples. But in our everyday work, we in fact have so many examples where developing countries, countries of the Global South, are today also investors in the development of sister countries. And sometimes also through triangular partnerships, we truly multiply not only each other's ideas, but actually also the financing that becomes possible. I just briefly want to allude to how we have tried into the DNA of UNDP's mandate, mission, and offer to countries today to embed the kind of support. And one of them, in fact, has been developed very closely with my dear colleague Junhua and his team in DESA. It is the integrated financing frameworks, which in the context of the current fiscal stress that is being faced by so many countries, is an unconditional offer of support to now over 86 countries, I believe, Junhua, where we are working with countries to look at what are the possibilities for financing. How can transboundary cooperation assist in actually taking these ideas not only forward, but to actually make them part of a recovery, a topic that will be so central to our deliberations in these corridors over the next 10 days, as we look at the SDGs, the half-time balance sheets. The INFF facility that was set up to support countries in actually moving forward with their INFFs, I think is a perfect illustration of how we're able to scale up very quickly and continue to drive the response to crisis by also connecting the response mechanisms amongst different countries. A second example I wanted to pick is not least because India just hosted the G20 summit. I think it is no secret that in many ways in India we find today numerous examples of what it means to have a very deliberate approach to building a digital public infrastructure. It's happening in many other countries, but the scale, the sophistication that India has brought to this understanding that digital doesn't just happen, and digital is not just a byproduct of a digital corporation that happens to maybe show an interest to invest with you or not. It is the product of very deliberate public policy, of very deliberate policies that also invest in inclusion and affordability to ensure that access is not just hypothetical. UNDP has been a proud partner to India both in terms of some of the frontline experimentation in recent years, but also through the pandemic. We have learned, for instance, how vaccination systems that were being developed in India in terms of digital tracking could actually also be used as a platform during the pandemic, and many other countries are now looking at this. And I could go on with many examples. In this room sit our colleagues from China, from Brazil, sometimes from smaller economies such as Kenya that on the front line of digital finance have given the world many examples. My point that I wish to make here is that as UNDP, with our colleagues in the UN Development System, we see ourselves as accelerators and amplifiers of that scope of investing in transformative solutions. And digital, for any country today, but particularly for LDCs, I think will be a crucial variable, not only in short-term recovery, but actually in pivoting forward on the development trajectory. And the last example is just a very simple one, but also a very powerful one. In UNDP, we like to call our Accelerator Labs network the world's largest learning network on development. Now, that's a very bold claim, and I don't often use that term, but I wanted to use it today because it was an unequivocal investment by UNDP in embedding in over 115 countries teams that we call the Accelerator Labs that do nothing but try to understand where innovation is emerging from within that country in which they serve as part of our UNDP presence, but then also to connect that innovation. And lo and behold, we have already unearthed, in inverted commas, over 6,000 solutions, many of which are traveling today between the countries and the labs networks. So INFF, digital public infrastructure, Accelerator Labs, just three very practical examples that we have taken to scale to give an institutional, and if you want, an institutional infrastructure expression to this commitment to South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation. Let me end by just acknowledging that in doing so, we are proud to work on a daily basis with the UN Office on South-South cooperation, with many of you who have enabled UNDP to be partners and companions to your own national development pathways, and to allow us to continue to work truly with that aspiration of being a 21st century connector of knowledge, experience, and expertise. And if I may end by just inviting all of you this evening, if you have a moment, to the South Delegates Dining Room at 6 o'clock, where we will present SDG Insights, reports from 95 countries that actually are looking through the lens of each of those 95 countries at this moment in time and asking the question, are the SDGs still a viable way forward, including for South-South cooperation? Then I can assure you, you will not only enjoy the company, you will leave, I think, with a great deal of hope and energy if you're able to find a moment. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Administrator, for the insightful statement, the examples, and the invitation. I give the floor now to Mrs. Rabab Fatima, High Representative for the Least Developed Countries, Landlocked Developing Countries, and Small Islands Developing States. The floor is yours, Mrs. Rabab.
Thank you very much. His Excellency Mr. Denis Francis, President of the 78th Session of the General Assembly, Ambassador Peter Mohan Perez, Permanent Representative of Sri Lanka and President of the High-Level Committee on South-South Cooperation, Ambassador Geraldo Pasta, Permanent Representative of Cuba, and the Chairman of G77, Ms. Dima Al-Khatib, Director of the UN Office for South-South Cooperation, my dear colleagues on the panel, Akim and Li Junhua, Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, I'm so very pleased to join you for today's special session to commemorate the United Nations Day for South-South Cooperation. The theme of today's commemoration, solidarity, equity, and partnership, and I'll use your word, Mr. Chairman, unleashing South-South cooperation to achieve the SDGs could not be more appropriate. At the midpoint of the 2030 agenda, we need to raise our collective ambitions to rally more support for countries in the Global South to recover the lost ground on achieving the SDGs and charting a prosperous future for all. Excellencies, much of what I had to say has been very eloquently covered by the previous distinguished speakers, so allow me to reiterate a few points focusing on the world's 92 most vulnerable countries, the LDCs, LLDCs, and the SIDS, and the situation for them is particularly difficult. And I would like to thank you, Mr. President, for recognizing this and reassuring us that you'll be placing special focus on these groups of countries. And I would also like to thank you, Akim, for also assuring us, sharing with us the range of programs and initiatives that you have focusing on some of these most vulnerable group of countries. These are indeed very practical solutions. Excellencies, these are the countries which are experiencing the worst impacts of the interconnected crises of the COVID-19 pandemic, global economic slowdown, escalating debt, climate emergency, and conflicts in different parts of the world. The progress of these countries in realizing their SDGs has been seriously jeopardized, further widening the development gap between them and the rest of the world. Against this backdrop, the countries in the Global South, especially the LDCs, LLDCs, and SIDS, need a comprehensive rescue plan. To that end, South-South cooperation can be the answer and can certainly be complementing North-South and triangular cooperation. By collaborating on various fronts, the countries in the Global South can leverage each other's strengths to address common challenges, reduce inequalities, and work towards a more sustainable and equitable future. Excellencies, in recent decades, LDCs, LLDCs, and the SIDS have forged closer partnerships amongst themselves and collaborated with their southern partners in areas including on policy making, trade, infrastructure, human capital development, resource mobilization, and technology transfer. At the ministerial meeting on South-South cooperation held during the LDC conference in Doha, earlier in March this year, we had substantive discussions on how South-South cooperation can help the LDCs overcome structural challenges, reduce poverty, and achieve the 5 deliverables of the Doha Programme of Action, namely a food stockholding mechanism, an online university, an international investment support center, enhanced resilient building mechanism, and a sustainable graduation support facility. We are now preparing for the 3rd United Nations Conference on the landlocked developing countries and the 4th International Conference on the Small Island Developing States, both to be held in 2024. These conferences offer important opportunities to forge durable South-South partnerships to help these countries overcome their unique development challenges and unlock their potentials. Excellencies, the LDCs, LLDCs, and the SIDS are in a race against time to overcome structural challenges and achieve the SDGs. Global South partners can play a pivotal role in this process by focusing on high-quality, action-oriented, and innovative solutions tailored to ground realities of individual countries. And allow me to highlight very briefly 3 specific areas in this regard, and this is not an exhaustive list. First, the COVID-19 pandemic, climate change, and other overlapping crises have plunged millions of people in the LDCs, LLDCs, and the SIDS into extreme poverty, malnourishment, malnutrition, and food insecurity. South-South cooperation can play a catalytic role in the adoption of context-specific and innovative solutions to help these countries alleviate poverty, enhance food security, and make food systems more resilient to external shocks. My office plans to facilitate further work with all relevant stakeholders to create more effective platforms to share knowledge, experiences, and best practices, as well as further policy alignment at regional and sub-regional levels to harness the full potentials of South-South cooperation. Second, enhanced access to technology can be a game changer for the LDCs, LLDCs, and SIDS to achieve the SDGs. The UN Technology Bank for the LDCs has already had some success stories in this regard, and now we need to further scale it up and explore new avenues for the LLDCs and the SIDS to also benefit from such STI partnership. Third and finally, Southern partners can help the LDCs, LLDCs, and the SIDS tackle their perennial gaps in financing for development and climate funding, including through innovative funding mechanisms such as blended finance. South-South cooperation is not, however, an alternative to North-South development cooperation, and it is imperative that traditional development partners honor their ODA commitment and step up support for the LDCs, LLDCs, and the SIDS to fully recover from the current crisis and make meaningful progress on the SDGs. Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, we are just a week away from the SDG Summit. Given the complex mix of challenges and crises we are facing, it has never been more crucial for the global community to come together across all sectors with all stakeholders to find solutions and deliver on its commitment. It is time to build on the momentum we have right now to revitalize global partnerships in all its forms, including South-South, North-South, and triangular cooperation, to accelerate actions to achieve the SDGs and realize the full potentials of the LDCs, LLDCs, and the SIDS. It is time we deliver on our promise to build a more equitable and sustainable world for all and leaving no one behind. Let me assure you of my full support to advance our collective actions towards that end. I thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Fatima Rabab, High Representative for the LDCs, LLDCs, and SIDS. I would like now to pass the floor to Mr. Lee Junhua, USG for Economic and Social Affairs. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Dima. Well, Your Excellency, the President of the 38th session of the UN General Assembly, Your Excellency, the President of the 21st session of the High-Level Committee on the South-South Cooperation, Your Excellency, the Chair of the G77 and China, my dear colleagues from the UN entities, and also the Excellency, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. As we gathered here today to commemorate the United Nations Day for South-South Cooperation, we have a unique opportunity to celebrate the achievements of the developing countries in the area of development cooperation. Today, we celebrated 45 years of the progress since the adoption of the Buenos Aires Plan of Action for promoting and implementing technical cooperation among developing countries, or BAPA. South-South cooperation has been a source of dynamic and innovative solutions, enabling developing nations to tackle both immediate and long-term development challenges effectively. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we witnessed the countries supporting each other with vital resources like vaccines, personal protective equipment, and a digital solution during landlocks. We have seen countries extend crucial humanitarian aid to one another at the times of the climate-related disasters. We have witnessed the transfer of technology and digital infrastructure playing an important role in improved connectivity, while the innovative solutions such as climate shock-resistant hybrid rice have been shared to safeguard the food systems. Leaders in developing countries are also forging closer economic cooperation across the developing world. Moreover, South-South cooperation has amplified the voices of the most vulnerable, including least developed countries, landlocked developing countries, and small island developing states, which share common vulnerabilities. It has provided complementary support to LDCs that are graduating from their status, playing a critical role in sharing experiences and best practices in policy development. Here at the UN DESA, we will continue to support the implementation, effectiveness, and the impact of the South-South cooperation by fostering the peer learning and networking among member states. Actually, this morning, DESA, together with about a dozen UN entities, launched Interagency Task Force and the GDI, the Global Development Initiative, together with the Permanent Mission of China, to inject the new dynamics and additional momentum to the South-South cooperation to accelerate the implementation of the 2030 Agenda for the Sustainable Development. We really hope that by all those new building blocks, we could inject them more and achieve more tangible results for South-South cooperation. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, we have come a long way, but as we reflected on the journey of the South-South cooperation and its critical role in achieving SDGs, it is essential to acknowledge that we are not currently on track to meet our aspirations. The world is grappling with cascading crises and conflicts that have exacerbated pre-existing development challenges, amplifying the vulnerability and instability of many nations and reversing hard-on development gains. While these crises have strengthened the resolve of the developing countries and their partners to engage in innovative South-South cooperation or triangular cooperation, we must recognize that these alone cannot effect the level of changes that we need. Developed nations must work collaboratively with their counterparts in the Global South to create an enabling global environment and improved financial instruments, such as blended finance, to pave the way for a sustainable future for all. In this context, the Secretary General has put forward the SDG stimulus to improve the availability of finance for the digital transformation, renewable energy, social protection, job creation, healthcare, sustainable food systems, and urban infrastructure in developing countries. The good news is that with all the efforts, the recent G20 declaration give the plus or give the blessing to this, the SDG stimulus. We really hope that by the next week, when the leaders gather here, they would endorse the political declaration for the SDG summit, which includes a strong push for the SDG stimulus. At the heart of this vision is a fairer and a more inclusive international financial architecture that gives stronger voice and participation to the developing countries and to keep pace with the scale and the complexity of the contemporary challenges. A unified voice from the developing world will remain crucial to catalyze much-needed reforms in this context. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, the United Nations remains steadfast in its commitment to supporting all nations, in turbocharging their efforts to realize the SDGs and ensuring that those most affected by global crisis are not left behind. As we approach the SDG summit, we must rally the collective determination and political will needed to build a more equitable and sustainable world for all. Let us seize this historical opportunity to deliver on our promise to the people and the planet we serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee Junhua, Undersecretary General for Economic and Social Affairs, for your message. Excellencies, we now move to the next segment of our program. We have prepared a short video highlighting South-South and Triangular Cooperation stakeholders' voices. These are short inspirational messages showcasing regional and national South-South impact, opportunities, and how the UN development system may offer support. So colleagues may now play the video.
Un día como hoy, hace poco más de 40 años, la comunidad internacional se reunió en Buenos Aires, dejando una huella imborrable en lo que refiere a la cooperación al desarrollo. El Plan de Acción de Buenos Aires, acordado en aquella primera conferencia, es el documento fundacional de lo que ahora entendemos como cooperación sur-sur, referente indispensable para el diálogo y la coordinación política de los países del sur global. Redoblando aquel esfuerzo, el segundo hito de la cooperación sur-sur volvió a tener lugar en la ciudad de Buenos Aires, 40 años después. Este encuentro nos dejó como legado un importante documento final que, orientado a la acción y con una clara visión de futuro, también nos asigna un enorme compromiso. Nuestro país está convencido de la contribución de la cooperación sur-sur al desarrollo. Su naturaleza solidaria, participativa, surgida de experiencias compartidas, sobre la base de objetivos comunes, son valores que la Argentina promueve, difunde y practica mediante el ejercicio activo de la cooperación sur-sur, siendo una parte integral de nuestra política exterior. Argentina ha venido trabajando y contribuyendo en foros globales y regionales en la construcción de sinergias y consensos con la finalidad de fortalecer el rol de la cooperación internacional, procurando ubicar en el centro del debate la idea de que existen formas alternativas de concebir al desarrollo. Tenemos siempre la convicción de posicionar a la cooperación sur-sur como un protagonista del sistema de cooperación internacional y dotarla de mejores herramientas teóricas y metodológicas. Orgullosamente hemos traspasado la presidencia del Comité de Alto Nivel de las Naciones Unidas sobre Cooperación Sur-Sur a Sri Lanka, luego de 2 años de intenso trabajo. Con la misma vocación, este año hemos asumido la presidencia de la Mesa Ejecutiva de la Conferencia Regional sobre Cooperación Sur-Sur de la CEPAL. Como presidencia de la Conferencia de la CEPAL, nuestro país desea profundizar el debate sobre el estado crítico del financiamiento de la cooperación para el desarrollo, así como las categorizaciones de países por criterios económicos que entorpecen el acceso a los recursos disponibles y por ende profundizan las desigualdades entre los países. Sostenemos también que el foro por excelencia en donde deben darse el debate sobre la nueva arquitectura de la cooperación internacional son las Naciones Unidas. Es por ello que resulta fundamental promover el fortalecimiento del Comité sobre Cooperación Sur-Sur al mismo tiempo que adquiere particular relevancia cumplir con el mandato de aquel encuentro que exhorta a las instituciones financieras y de desarrollo multilaterales a un aumento de los recursos financieros y de cooperación técnica para promover la cooperación sur-sur y triangular. Esperamos que esta nueva conmemoración del Día de Cooperación Sur-Sur interpele a la comunidad internacional para reafirmar el compromiso con la cooperación, el multilateralismo y la solidaridad. Y continuemos trabajando para que la cooperación sur-sur logre contribuir efectivamente al logro de los ODS y al desarrollo de nuestras sociedades. Muchas gracias.
Ayubowan and greetings from Sri Lanka as we commemorate the UN Day for South-South Cooperation. An international day is a designated day of celebration intended to raise awareness and understanding of a specific matter of global importance. In this case, the peoples and the nations of the Global South to engage in a healthy evaluation of our relation with one another and that of the nations of the Global North concerning issues that affect, among other things, our development agenda. Sri Lanka recognizes South-South cooperation as a mechanism for collaboration and exchange of knowledge and expertise among nations in the Global South and a manifestation of cooperation between countries. It recognizes that developing countries possess valuable knowledge, resources, and innovative solutions that can be shared and utilized to foster development and improve the well-being of their population. It also creates a conducive environment which allows countries of the South to learn from the experience of each other, exchange best practices, and support one another in an area such as economic growth, trade, technology transfer, agriculture, healthcare, education, and more. It must be appreciated that this form of cooperation encourages solidarity, equality, and mutual benefit, fostering a sense of shared responsibility among developing countries. The growing economic cooperation and friendly diplomatic ties of the countries of the Global South is a further manifestation of the increasing potential of the South-South Cooperation Initiative. As a country similarly circumstanced with shared histories, there are many lessons we can share in pursuing our development path. Sri Lanka takes pride in chairing the high-level committee on South-South cooperation and look forward to furthering our collective objective during this tenure. Thank you.
South-South cooperation is a manifestation of solidarity among peoples and countries of the South that contribute to their national well-being, collective self-reliance, and the attainment of internationally agreed development goals, including the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. In efforts to strengthen cooperation to leverage Egypt's pivotal role in Africa through South-South and triangular cooperation, the Ministry of International Cooperation has worked collectively with several national entities as well as international development partners to push forward the South-South and Triangular Cooperation agenda, which is underpinned by the principles of country ownership, equality, achieving mutual benefits, as well as the non-conditionality for development cooperation. It is within this vein that South-South and Triangular Cooperation contribute to transforming major challenges into opportunities for the benefit of developing countries and towards accelerating progress for achieving the SDGs, all while promoting integrated partnerships in Africa.
Rwanda Cooperation, as the agency mandated with coordinating and mainstreaming Rwanda's South-South cooperation activities in the spirit of solidarity and equity, we have the opportunity not only to contribute to achieving the SDGs through our different services that we offer to our partners from across the globe, but we are also privileged to learn from others and experience firsthand the impact of activities carried out with different countries from the Global South. We appreciate our collaboration with the UN Development System and look forward to building continuous win-win partnerships.
Hola a todas y todos. En el Día de la Cooperación Sur-Sur es crucial destacar.
Ladies and gentlemen, on the UN Day of South-South Cooperation, it's important that in the pursuit of progress and to achieve sustainable development, Mexico is dedicated to strengthening the foundations for effective and diverse South-South cooperation. Projects such as Sembrando Vida and Jóvenes Construyendo el Futuro emphasize our dedication to improving the Central American region. We foster strong alliances, exemplified by our cooperation funds with Chile, Uruguay, and the Pacific Alliance. Currently, there are 95 projects in South America and 61 with Central America and the Caribbean, which correspond to technical and scientific cooperation. Let us celebrate the accomplishments of South-South cooperation and reaffirm our commitment to a more just and equal world. Let us continue to work together for a better future for all. Thank you very much.
The Ministry of Science and ICT of the Republic of Korea is pleased to commemorate this year's United Nations Day for South-South cooperation. South-South and Triangular cooperation through science, technology, and innovations are ever more important these days. And the Republic of Korea is committed to fostering its cooperation on digitalization and green technology based on solidarity, equity, and partnership. Thank you.
Dear colleagues, greetings from Norway and the Norwegian Agency for Exchange Cooperation, NOREC. Annually, we are facilitating the exchange of 600 young people between countries in the world, and 400 of these are on exchange between countries in the Global South. We acknowledge the tremendous work of the UN Office for South-South Cooperation, and we're looking forward to our continuous collaborations in the years to come. Thank you.
As the largest developing country, China is a strong supporter of South-South cooperation. China is committed to achieving common development, and our development has provided great opportunities for the world. The Global Development Initiative launched by President Xi Jinping offers new impetus for global partnership in achieving the SDGs. China will join hands with UN agencies and other partners in deepening South-South cooperation.
Happy 2023 UN Day of South-South Cooperation. Today we celebrate the remarkable impact of unity within our regions and nations. Together we ignite progress and seize boundless opportunities. As we journey forward, let us remember the pivotal role of the UN development system. It empowers member states to achieve their goals, fostering collaboration for a brighter future. South-South cooperation is a bridge that unites us, fueling global unity and progress. Let us stand together, innovate, and build a world where shared success knows no limits. On behalf of the government of Tajikistan, let me express our commitment to strengthening and advancing South-South cooperation across the globe.
South-South Cooperation, or SSC, is a valuable catalyst for the implementation of the SDGs. It is driven by and responsive to the needs of developing countries. The Philippines remains committed to supporting and advancing SSC in our development efforts, and we call on all our friends and partners to join us in this endeavor. Happy SSC Day.
The Lesotho Highlands Water Project, developed in close collaboration between the Kingdom of Lesotho and South Africa, is a reference point for South-South cooperation involving African countries. By exporting and contributing to universal and equitable access to safe and affordable drinking water for South Africa, and by providing access to sustainable energy to its own people, the Kingdom of Lesotho is playing an important role in rescuing the SDGs in Africa and deepening regional integration.
For too long, we in the South have underestimated our abilities to help each other. Hence, we in the Islamic Development Bank have embarked on a journey to intensify South-South cooperation to achieve the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Therefore, on this day, under the roof of this august institution, let's renew our commitment to serve humanity, all of humanity.
Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, the OPIC Fund delivers development support from the South to the South. Our 50 years track record encompasses financing, partnerships, knowledge, and technical assistance to help countries achieve their SDG targets. Together with our global partners, we aim to undo recent development setbacks and build future resilience by unlocking the full potential of South-South and triangular cooperation. In order to do so, we pledge to leverage our existing partnerships and forge new ones, pool more resources and innovate solutions, contribute more to rigorous cooperation frameworks that better support an inclusive, resilient, and green recovery for all countries. We look forward to working with all of you and wish you a successful and productive day.
Thank you. I would like now to defer the chairmanship of the second segment of this day to the permanent representative of Sri Lanka and the high-level committee president, His Excellency Mr. Peter Mohan Maitri Peiris. May I defer that to you, sir? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director, for deferring the chair to my responsibility, which I gladly do for you. Excellencies, we have exactly 40 minutes because I'm told that these premises are needed for another meeting. I'm not for a moment pressing you to get through your statements quickly, but I ask you to limit the length of your interventions so that we may hear from as many as you as possible in the time allocated to us. So all statements submitted to the Secretariat will be uploaded to our web page. Right. Okay. Do I call on Nepal? Go down this list? Yes. Right.
I'm withdrawing.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Not at all. Not at all.
Thank you very much for coming.
Not at all.
Good luck. Yes. Can I go down the list of distinguished delegates who are down to speak? May I now give the floor to the permanent representative of Nepal on behalf of the group of the LDCs. The floor is yours, sir.
Mr. President, Madam Director, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, I am delighted to deliver the statement on behalf of the least developed countries. We are gathered here to observe the South Cooperation Day, pledging to strengthen the spirit of solidarity, equity, and partnership. Today we are in the midst of crises and challenges. Multiple crises of climate change, biodiversity loss, pollution, the COVID-19 pandemic, growing conflicts, and heightening geopolitical tensions have inflicted the pain of utter severity and scale on people and the planet. Our hard-earned progress on SDGs is sliding downward. Our commitment and promises to save the people and planet are on the test. The unprecedented time demands more and more of the spirit of the solidarity. The 21st session of the High-Level Committee amply highlighted that South-South cooperation can play an important role to accelerate SDG implementation, to bridge digital gaps in developing countries, to address climate change, and to recover from the pandemic. Excellencies, I appreciate the South-South Cooperation's Office for playing pivotal role in implementing the Buenos Aires Plan of Action, the Nairobi outcome, and the BAPA plus 40 outcome. It is heartening to know that the office is working in collaborations with OHR-LLS to promote South-South cooperation for implementing programs for countries in special situations. Similarly, appreciable is its role to coordinate the implementation of UN system-wide strategy on South-South cooperation and to align it with the UN Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework. Further, and even better coordination between interagency mechanisms on South-South and triangular cooperations and UN Sustainable Development Group can only strengthen our efforts to achieve SDGs. It is also vital to keep the momentum in integrating the South-South cooperation in operational activities of the UN development system and its increased incorporation in the strategies and country programs by UN entities, funds, and programs. The development challenges which the developing countries, particularly the LDCs, face are massive, requiring concerted actions through all kinds of partnership, North-South, South-South, and triangular cooperation. Today, cooperation among the Global South is growing in various areas, including trade, technology, and education. But it should not be taken as a substitute for the North-South cooperation. Excellencies, Doha Program of Action for LDCs, adopted at the 5th UN Conference on LDCs, calls upon the countries of the Global South to further strengthen the support to least developed countries. The DPOA also calls for support from the countries of the South, especially in the areas of technical assistance, sharing of best practices in terms of their development, especially in areas of productive capacity building, infrastructure, energy, science and technology, trade, investment, and transport cooperations. Finally, Mr. President, the observation of this day not only attests to the resolve of the Global South to overcome their structural hurdles in the pursuit of the development, but also to fully unleash its potential. Let us resolve to exploit the full potential on this day, to deliver for humanity and to save the planet. I express gratitude to the South-South Cooperation Office for organizing this important event. I thank you all.
I thank the distinguished permanent representative of Nepal for that statement on behalf of the group of LDCs. I now give the floor to the distinguished permanent representative of India. The floor is yours, ma'am.
Thank you, Chair, and my greetings to one and all on the occasion of the UN Day for South-South Cooperation. In our increasingly interconnected world, where global challenges recognize no borders, cooperation among nations has never been more vital, and this point has been stressed by many before me. South-South cooperation in particular offers the potential to build stronger ties among countries of the Global South, fostering mutual growth, and addressing shared concerns. India's commitment to South-South cooperation goes beyond mere policy. It is deeply rooted in our ethos and philosophy, which envisions the world as one large family. And India has consistently championed the cause of the Global South. The G20's New Delhi Leaders' Declaration, adopted on 9 September 2023 and alluded to by the UNDP Administrator Achim Steiner, addresses the concerns of fellow developing countries comprehensively. It places strong emphasis on sustainable and inclusive growth for the Global South, full and effective implementation of the 2030 Agenda, including increased financing, improved medical supplies and production capacities in developing countries, the promotion of resilient growth by addressing debt vulnerabilities, accelerated efforts towards the Paris Agreement, reforms for more effective multilateral development banks, enhanced access to digital services, and greater inclusion of developing countries' perspectives in the G20 agenda. But the success of India's G20 presidency was not incidental or serendipitous. India has always backed its commitment to the Global South with tangible actions. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we provided made-in-India vaccines to approximately 100 countries, and 150 nations received medicines from India, often referred to as the pharmacy of the world. Our development partnerships have expanded significantly over the past decade, reaching 78 nations across diverse regions. The 600 projects we have delivered or are currently executing stand as a testament to our goodwill and capability. Recognizing the central role of capacity building in development, we have offered training to 200,000 individuals from over 160 countries. Our approach is guided by the Kampala principles articulated by Prime Minister Modi in 2018, which prioritize the partner's needs. Throughout this journey, India has also been a source of innovative ideas and initiatives focused on the welfare of the Global South. Driven by our foundational belief that India's development is inseparable from that of the rest of the world, we continue to collaborate with the UN and its agencies to elevate South-South cooperation. The India-UN Development Fund, a single-country South-South initiative at the UN, has successfully developed a portfolio of 75 development projects across 56 developing countries in just 6 years. This fund strongly addresses many of the contemporary global issues and their specific impact on developing countries. I could go on longer, Chair, but given that time is of the essence and we are under your guidance, suffice to say that South-South cooperation is indeed the compass guiding us towards a more equitable and sustainable future. And where India is a beacon of hope, championing human-centric and inclusive development. As Prime Minister Narendra Modi has aptly stated, together we wield the transformative power to positively impact countless lives. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished permanent representative India, Ambassador Cambodge, for her statement. I now give the floor to the distinguished permanent representative of China, Ambassador Jun. Ambassador Jun, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, at present, multiple global crises intertwine and also overlap with each other, and global development is faced with enormous challenges. We are at a critical stage in terms of the implementation of SDG, and South-South cooperation is becoming ever more important. Of course, I have to point out that there are so many empty chairs in this meeting room, and probably my voice is not agreed by every one of them. Combining the discussion of today's meeting, I have the following points to highlight. First of all, we have to follow true multilateralism and jointly promote international cooperation for development. Only when developing countries achieve development, then we can talk about common development for all countries and talk about equality, fairness, and justice. We need to promote the building of a more equal and balanced global partnership, ensure that developed countries effectively deliver on ODA commitments, and support developing countries to make sure that South-South cooperation can play a complementary role and shape strong synergy for global development. Secondly, we should prioritize development and continue to deepen South-South cooperation. Respect for national sovereignty, autonomy, equality, and mutual benefit. These are the basic principles for South-South cooperation, and the UN should insist on putting development on the top of the agenda and create conducive political environment. And in terms of the actions, we need to strengthen coordination and ensure that development agencies and international financial institutions to focus on supporting South-South cooperation as a priority, to step up effort, and this will create conducive environment for cooperation among developing countries. Thirdly, we should be action-oriented and deepen practical cooperation. The international community should take addressing common challenges as the starting point, focus on the urgent needs of developing countries, and adopt pragmatic approaches, and also provide financial, technological, and capacity-building support in areas such as poverty alleviation, climate change, digital economy, and green development, so as to help developing countries realize sustainable development. China firmly supports South-South cooperation, and we are always committed in terms of promoting common development, and we have always been a forerunner for South-South cooperation. President Xi Jinping has put forward the Global Development Initiative, which injects strong momentum to global development cooperation as well as the implementation of SDG. And President Xi Jinping, not long ago in BRICS Leaders Summit, announced that the Chinese financial institutions will provide about 10 billion for the implementation of GDI-related practical cooperative projects and to support the fulfillment of the 2030 agenda. And this morning, we convened a meeting to formally establish a task force for facilitating the implementation of the GDI, and this will further enhance synergy between GDI and Sustainable Development Agenda and also yield more practical outcome. Right now, China is on a new journey for the Chinese path to modernization, and China's development will mean important opportunities and space for development for all countries in the world. We are ready to deepen South-South cooperation under the Global Development Initiative and also to work for accelerated implementation of the 2030 Agenda. Thank you, Madam President.
Distinguished Permanent Representative of China for his statement. I now give the floor to the Distinguished Permanent Representative of Morocco. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Good afternoon, Excellencies, dear colleagues. At the outset, I would like to express deep appreciation and thanks to all of the colleagues of the permanent missions and the UN system for expressing their condolences and solidarity with the Kingdom of Morocco following the devastating and tragic consequences of the earthquake that hit my country. We also express our solidarity with Libya for the devastating flooding that hit the country, and we express our condolences for the lives lost. Dear colleagues, the celebration of the UN Day for South-South cooperation this year came at critical juncture for the international community at large and for the Kingdom of Morocco in particular, in the aftermath of the sad event of the earthquake. Solidarity, which is at the heart of the South-South cooperation, equity, and genuine partnerships shall be our motto in the lead-up of the SDG Summit and the other key milestone events of the High-Level Week. Under the leadership of His Majesty King Mohammed VI, the Kingdom of Morocco has made of South-South cooperation one of the main pillars of its foreign policy, putting forward a clear, pioneering, and human-centered vision of the South-South cooperation based on unity and solidarity. This strategic vision has gone beyond the framework of the African region to extend to all the countries of the South, in particular the countries of Central America, the Pacific, and the Caribbean. And it is tailored on pragmatic, multidimensional, and action-oriented cooperation model based on 1, the establishment of diversified partnership in key sectors for sustainable development, 2, academic cooperation and human capacity building, 3, artistic and cultural cooperation, as well as for international humanitarian aid. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Morocco is convinced that South-South and triangular cooperation is not only an immediate vehicle to implement the SDGs today, but they also pave the way for sustainable and resilient future. In this regard, the Moroccan Agency for International Cooperation, which was created 36 years ago, continues to play a central role in scaling up projects and initiatives that boost partnerships and promote South-South and triangular cooperation in several fields: academic cooperation, technical cooperation, and capacity building. Moreover, Morocco continues to leverage the role of South-South and triangular cooperation for promoting the climate action as well as the sustainability of food systems, which are a privileged area of Moroccan South-South and triangular cooperation policy. I am thinking in particular of the Triple S initiative, which aims to promote stability, security, and sustainability, and facing the migration caused by environmental degradation and climate change, and the adaptation of agriculture in Africa, Triple A initiatives. Currently, Morocco continues to support the operationalization of the 3 climate commissions, established also on the margins of the COP21, as well as supporting food security through the provisions of thousands of tons of fertilizers to several developing countries, particularly in Africa. In conclusion, humanitarian action has always been a milestone for the active solidarity of the Kingdom of Morocco towards countries affected by health crises and emergencies, natural disasters. In this regard, 18 international humanitarian actions were carried out by the Kingdom of Morocco for the benefit of 25 countries, the majority of which are least developed countries, LDCs. Our country has also worked on the construction of clinics and hospitals, as well as delivery of humanitarian aid in the form of medical materials and equipment and medicines in the affected area. Finally, I would say the last word will be to commend the role of the UN Office for South-South Cooperation under the leadership of Mrs. Dina Khatib for their active role, for their active key role in promoting SSC and supporting the states at the United Nations systems. I thank you very much, Mr. President.
I thank the distinguished Permanent Representative of Morocco for his statement, and I now give the floor to the distinguished Permanent Representative of Bangladesh. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President and the Chair of this session, Ambassador Mohan Pieris, Excellencies, UN Deputy Administrator Akim Steiner, distinguished delegates and colleagues. I thank the UN Office for South-South Cooperation and the Permanent Mission of Sri Lanka in its capacity as the President of the UN High-Level Committee on SSC for organizing this commemorative event. And I thank the distinguished Permanent Representative of Cuba and the Director of UNO SSC, Dima Al-Khatib, for their remarks. I'm happy to join the celebration of the United Nations Day for South-South Cooperation, marking the 45th anniversary of the adoption of the Buenos Aires Plan of Action for promoting and implementing technical cooperation among developing countries. This occasion provides us with an opportunity to reaffirm the strong ties and solidarity among the peoples and countries of the Global South who are bonded by a shared historical legacy and development pathways. This year's theme of the day, Solidarity, Equity, and Partnership, Unlocking South-South Cooperation to Achieve the SDGs, highlights the critical need for continued and enhanced cooperation among the members of the Global South to navigate today's complex global development landscape and achieve our common development aspirations. Excellencies, the cascading effects of the pandemic, climate change, and conflicts have set back progress on sustainable development dramatically. Halfway through 2030, the world is far off track from achieving the SDGs. Stronger South-South and triangular cooperation combined with multilateral assistance can accelerate global economic recovery and get us on track to meeting the SDG targets on time. Achieving the SDGs will also require, among others, the support of the broader international community and development partners, the sharing of knowledge and technical expertise, technology transfer, access to finance, climate actions, and bridging the glaring digital divide. Excellencies, Bangladesh is cooperating with the countries of the South to exchange knowledge, experiences, and best practices, and to find innovative technological solutions to advance sustainable development. Bangladesh government's flagship project, Access to Information, is partnering with the UNDP and the UN Office for South-South Cooperation to develop innovative platforms such as E-Quality Center with a vision to ensure zero digital divide for the world. Through the initiative, Bangladesh is sharing with other developing countries digital solutions proven to provide digital access and transform underserved communities. We are also planning to launch an international ICT innovation I3 matching fund facility to support innovation and digitalization projects in the LDCs. Excellencies, we believe that the commemoration of the UN South-South Cooperation Day will bind the countries in the Global South together in solidarity and generate collective willpower to achieve our shared development vision and a brighter future for our people. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished permanent representative of Bangladesh for his statement, and I now give the floor to the distinguished permanent representative of Portugal. The floor is yours, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. President. Greetings to all as we celebrate the UN Day for South-South Cooperation. In the interest of time, allow me just to share with you three brief reflections. The first one, South-South and triangular cooperation constitutes important levers for the implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. They foster solidarity, equity, and partnerships through the sharing of experience, knowledge, and resources, and we must continue to harness their potential, and in so doing, contributing together to the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. Second, triangular cooperation has added value as it has impacted on other instruments of our toolbox, as it can also open space for new South-South partnerships. It is a flexible and impactful tool that overcomes the traditional North-South dichotomy, fostering global solidarity and promoting ownership of all parties involved, without prejudice to the broader responsibilities of developed countries in the field of international development. Emerging trends show a rise in triangular cooperation in Africa and the Asia-Pacific, while enthusiasm for this instrument in Latin America is quite lively, having contributed to tackling the pandemics and its recovery. Third, Portugal remains committed to the promotion of South-South and triangular cooperation. Every year, we convene an international meeting in Lisbon on this subject, organized in collaboration with OECD. The next meeting will take place in October 12 and 13, and will focus on the scaling up partnerships, including with seeds. We have partnered with countries in Africa and Latin America, for instance, in the agriculture sector, with Brazil for the sustainable production of coffee in Mozambique, and with Colombia in the cocoa sector of São Tomé and Príncipe. Last July, we signed a Memorandum of Understanding with the Ibero-American General Secretariat, creating a €1 million fund financed by Portugal to promote triangular cooperation between Portugal, Latin America, and African countries. This will support projects and initiatives aimed at the development of strategic capacities and exchange of experience in such key areas as education, health, gender equality, climate change, food security, culture, social cohesion, digital transformation, and education for development. In short, dear colleagues, as we reach the halfway mark of the 2030 Agenda and we face so many difficult and complex challenges, let us explore the potential of all the instruments at our disposal to leave no one behind and to promote effective solidarity around the globe. I thank you.
I thank the Distinguished Permanent Representative of Portugal for her statement, and I now give the floor to the Distinguished Permanent Representative of Egypt. The floor is yours, Excellency.
Thank you very much, Honorable President, my dear brother, Ambassador Mohan, our dear sister, Dima Al-Khatib. Grateful to have been invited to speak in this very important meeting. Happy South-South Cooperation Day. And let me start by adding my voice to all previous speakers in expressing full solidarity and extending our deepest condolences to my dear brother, Ambassador Omar Halal, the PR of Morocco, and to Ambassador Tariq El-Sunni of Libya on the great losses of lives due to the devastating earthquake and the floods in Libya. Egypt has declared a state of mourning for 3 days to express solidarity with our brothers of Morocco and Libya. Excellencies and distinguished delegates, we're meeting at a time of unprecedented global crisis. 8 years after the adoption of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, decades of development gains have been undermined and in some cases reversed. International cooperation and global solidarity have never been more essential to face the current challenges and to bring developing countries back on track to achieving the 2030 Agenda. Egypt continues to highlight the importance of accelerating and invigorating cooperation among countries of the South to collectively tackle common challenges. South-South and triangular cooperation plays a pivotal role in turning challenges into opportunities for the benefit of developing countries through diversifying international partnerships. We recognize that developing countries share common views on national development strategies and priorities. The similarity in experiences is the key catalyst which highlights the principles of South-South cooperation. Promoting cooperation among the Global South has the potential to yield positive results in a large number of vital areas for developing countries, including food security and nutrition, climate action, digital cooperation, trade, disease control and prevention, to just name a few. South-South cooperation and its agenda should continue to be set by countries of the South. Egypt continues to take action through the relevant Egyptian entities to engage in and support South-South and triangular cooperation modalities and modules, including through the Egyptian Agency of Partnership for Development, EAPD, and Cairo International Center for Conflict Resolution, Peacekeeping, and Peace Building. We have a lot of those centers who have programs for South-South cooperation in the Ministry of Agriculture, in the Ministry of Communication, and others. I just named those who are working as common platforms as well. This includes offering training courses, providing and shipments and humanitarian assistance, dispatching experts and physicians in different specialities, establishing health facilities and surgery centers, and granting scholarship to students from developing countries. It also entails implementing joint cooperation program and exchanging experiences among countries of the South in numerous fields. We also work on providing programs to strengthen the capacities of government officials and regional organizations across Africa. For instance, I wish to shed light on the experience in the Ministry of Water Resources, where we are good as Egyptians in the issue of reuse of water and so on. We're offering a lot of technical expertise to the Nile Basin countries to improve water efficiency in those countries. I would like to indicate our support to the mandate of the UN Office for South-South Cooperation as the focal point for promoting and facilitating South-South and triangular cooperation on a global and UN system-wide levels. In this regard, we look forward to promoting cooperation between the Office and regional organizations to form and empower more partnerships for the benefit of developing countries. I do thank you, Mr. President. Thank you very much, my dear brother, Ambassador Mohan.
I thank the distinguished permanent representative of Egypt for his statement. I now turn the floor to the distinguished permanent representative of Nigeria. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much, dear brother Mohan, and to really thank the Office of South-South Cooperation and all the organizers of this day. I think the rationale and the objectives of South-South Cooperation, which brought about the creation 45 years ago of BAPA, I think really have been laid out very well. In fact, what's important is to say that, to thank all the other speakers who have spoken before me and to admit that Nigeria has benefited from South-South Cooperation. And to say that, one, the beauty of it is that you teach as you learn. Nigeria has, for example, a technical aid support scheme under which in the last 40 years or so, Nigeria has sent professionals in education, health, judicial, and legal studies, agriculture, name it, in the areas of needs of countries, to 38 countries, 40,000 professionals who will be in those countries for two years, fully paid for by Nigeria. This is really separate from those who come to Nigeria to study under scholarship. Simply people who are sent to 38 countries, mainly ACP countries. I think just to show that this is important, we have done, as South-South, we have done a lot, we should continue to do better. This is what is critical. And that certainly, for us, this is really a day to celebrate and to, of course, recommit to doing so. I think Nigeria will continue to do this as part of a commitment to South-South cooperation, as part of it also commitment to learn from South-South as part of our effort, in particular now, to achieve the SDGs. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
I thank the distinguished permanent representative of Nigeria for his statement, and I now give the floor to the distinguished permanent representative of El Salvador. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, President. I wish to begin by expressing our solidarity to the governments and peoples of Morocco and Libya following the disasters that recently struck both of their countries. These phenomena precisely remind us of the fact that current challenges are of a different nature and a different complexity, but they require, all of them, strengthened global solidarity and coordination to overcome them. El Salvador, precisely recognizing the catalyzing role of South-South cooperation, has ramped up its participation over recent years in this type of initiative, focused on supporting domestic actions for social well-being, economic growth, and also the protection of the environment by exchanging knowledge, engaging in technology transfer, and capacity building with other countries that face common challenges, and also with valuable support of different relevant partners. This way, domestically, we have engaged in the institutional changes required to strengthen El Salvador's role in South-South cooperation. And this has enabled us to promote an active role as a provider and also receiver of initiatives of this type of collaboration. Said efforts have been engaged in within ESCO, the Institution for International Cooperation, and we have especially been working with Spanish-speaking countries, and just like I mentioned previously, we have benefited from the support of several relevant partners, and this has been essential in addressing financing needs, for example, and mobilizing and making headway in South-South cooperation projects. Our institutions have also made progress in establishing mechanisms and in engaging in initiatives where El Salvador can help with lessons learned, sharing knowledge and exchanging experience on the implementation of actions. in areas such as security for our citizens, early childhood development, innovation, health systems, education, renewable energy, and agriculture, just to mention a few. Mr. President, I also wish to recognise the valuable role of the United Nations Office for South-South Cooperation that promotes, coordinates, and precisely supports this type of global cooperation, and particular within the United Nations system. We hope that we'll be able to strengthen our collaboration and our link with this institution to support our domestic initiatives for South-South cooperation. Once again, Mr. President, we reiterate the fact that El Salvador stands ready to and is interested in continuing to strengthen and further the role of South-South cooperation as a relevant but also complementary way of addressing our current challenges, putting, once again, as I mentioned, our knowledge and lessons learnt, making them available to help to achieve sustainable development. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished permanent representative of El Salvador for the statement, and I now hand over the floor to the distinguished representative of Malaysia.
Thank you, Chair. Dear Ambassador Mohan, I wish to extend my appreciation to you for convening this significant event. My delegation wishes to align ourselves with the G77 statement delivered by Cuba. This 45th anniversary of the adoption of the Buenos Aires Plan of Action marks a significant milestone. It reminds us of the enduring significance of South-South cooperation within the realm of international collaboration, particularly in the execution of development programs tailored to the needs of developing countries. It is remarkable to note that the cooperative efforts of among South-South partners, which have spanned over 4 decades, continue to hold relevance and importance in our collective pursuit of sustainable development. Here, I wish to express Malaysia's unwavering dedication as a fervent advocate and steadfast partner of South-South cooperation. We firmly believe that the exchange of knowledge, best practices, and capacity building among South nations and all stakeholders can play a pivotal role in the advancement of developing countries. Malaysia, therefore, remains resolute in its commitment to South-South cooperation as a key strategy in accelerating progress towards the 2030 agenda, ensuring that no one is left behind. Malaysia attaches great importance on supporting capacity building initiatives for developing nations. Through the Malaysian Technical Cooperation Program, MTCP, Malaysia has provided training to over 34,000 participants hailing from 144 developing countries. The breadth of these training courses encompasses critical areas such as healthcare, education, agriculture, sustainable development, poverty alleviation, investment promotion, information and communication technology, economics, and public administration. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, during the 21st session of the High-Level Committee on South-South Cooperation, numerous delegations emphasized the synergetic relationship between South-South cooperation and North-South cooperation, highlighting the pivotal role of triangular cooperation, particularly in technology transfer, capacity building, and the sharing of knowledge. It is Malaysia's steadfast belief that intensifying North-South cooperation, guided by the principles of respect, equality, and mutual benefits, is crucial in addressing global inequality and inequity. Lastly, Malaysia views South-South cooperation as a catalyst for the exchange of knowledge, best practices, and resources among developing nations and stakeholders across various issues. In the quest to build back better, Malaysia stands ready to collaborate with other nations, drawing upon our national capabilities, including through the Malaysian Technical Cooperation Program. Let us remain resolute in maximizing the potential of South-South cooperation to fortify our global resilience post-pandemic. Thank you.
Distinguished delegates, I have been reminded that we have overstayed our occupation of these premises, if I was to put it in legal terms. Can I make a plea that due to the compelling circumstances that we upload our statements on to eDelegate, and that we will have it appropriately reflected in the record. And if you please bear with me, or bear with the South-South Cooperation Secretariat, that we have to kind of bring the meeting to an end because of the need for this ECOSOC room for another meeting. So that being the case, I would like to express my thanks to all of you for your insightful contributions today. As we come to an end of our time today, due to compelling reasons, I would like to encourage any of you who are not able to deliver your message in person to please submit them to the UNOSSE, who will post them among all others on their webpage and share them broadly. I thank you all once again, and I call this 2023 commemoration meeting of the United Nations Day for South-South Cooperation to a close.
Thank you.